Hello and welcome. In this explainer, we're digging into Rhode Island's Charitable Solicitation registration. We'll look at what it is, who needs to register, and how you can make sure you're staying compliant.
Just so you know, this is part of our multi-state fundraising compliance series. Our whole goal here is to take these really complex regulations and turn them into practical advice for nonprofit leaders just like you. And this resource is brought to you by Ironwood Registrations.
So, let's get right to it. Does your nonprofit fundraise in Rhode Island? If the answer is yes, or even maybe, then there's a really critical requirement you need to know about. The state says you have to register before you start asking for any donations. So let's break down exactly what that means for you.
Okay, so who's actually in charge of these rules? Well, in Rhode Island, that would be the Department of Business Regulation. They're the ones who keep a public list of every single organization that's allowed to fundraise there. And really, the most important question for you is, does your nonprofit need to be on that list? Let's figure that out.
Now, this is a really important point. It honestly doesn't matter where your nonprofit is located. You could be in California, you could be in Florida. If you are asking for donations from folks in Rhode Island, this law applies to you. It doesn't matter if it's a targeted email or just a broad social media campaign. The rule is all about where the donor is, not where you are.
You might be wondering what solicitation even means. Well, the state has a really broad definition for it. I mean, think about it like this. If you have a Donate Now button on your website and someone from Rhode Island click it, boom, that's solicitation. It's the same for email campaigns, social media posts, direct mail. Pretty much any way you ask for money counts.
Okay, so let's say you figured out you do need to register. What happens next? What does that process actually look like? Let's walk through the step-by-step for getting that initial registration filed. The good news here is that the application is all online. But before you jump in, you'll want to get your documents in order. It's pretty standard stuff, you know. You'll need your articles of incorporation, that IRS letter that proves you're a 501c3, your most recent Form 990, and a list of your current officers and directors. And along with those documents, there's a one-time filing fee for the initial registration. It's $90.
Okay, pay close attention to this next part. It's a small detail, but it's one that trips up a lot of organizations. I'm talking about the signature requirement. Your filing has to be signed by 2 authorized officials, and, this is the key part, one of them must be a director. It's a very specific rule, and if you get it wrong, it can really hold up the whole process.
So getting registered is really just step 1. To keep fundraising legally, you've got to renew every single year. And this is where Rhode Island does things a little differently. It has a pretty unique system, so you'll want to pay close attention here. And here's what makes Rhode Island stand out. You see, most states tie your renewal deadline to your fiscal year end. It's simple, easy to remember. But not Rhode Island. Oh no, they use what's called an expiration-based system. This means your renewal is due 1 year after your initial registration date. So every single nonprofit has its own unique deadline, which makes it absolutely critical to track. So let's look at how this timeline actually works. The big takeaway here is that your renewal isn't due on the day it expires. It's actually due a full 30 days before that expiration date. This confuses a lot of people. If you're waiting until that final day, well, you're already late.
And what happens if you miss that deadline? Well, the state will charge a late fee. It's $20 for every single month you're overdue.
Now, the renewal isn't just about filling out a form. You also have to send in some financial information every year. And what you need to submit really depends on one key thing, your organization's annual revenue.
And that magic number, that key financial threshold in Rhode Island, is $500,000 in annual revenue.
So if your organization brings in more than that $500,000, it triggers a much bigger reporting requirement. You'll have to submit a full audited financial statement, and it has to be prepared by an independent CPA. Now, if you're under that threshold, don't worry. Just sending in your standard IRS Form 990 is usually all you need to do.
All right, let's talk about exemptions. What if you don't need to register at all? The good news is Rhode Island does have a few. And what's really interesting here is that they're usually automatic. That means if you qualify, you're just exempt. You don't have to file a bunch of paperwork to claim it. Now, the most common exemption has a very strict 3-part test, and you have to meet all 3 of these conditions. Okay, so number 1, you raise $25,000 or less per year. Number 2, you don't use any professional fundraisers. And number 3, all of your officers and directors are volunteers, completely unpaid. But wait, there's a really important little detail about that $25,000 rule. Any money you get from corporations, foundations, or government grants, it doesn't count toward that threshold. This is a huge deal because it means a lot more organizations might actually qualify for this exemption than they think.
And besides that main rule, a few other types of organizations are also just exempt by their very nature. We're talking about most religious organizations, schools and universities, and membership groups that are only asking their own members for support. Okay, let's just recap the biggest takeaways here. Number 1, always register before you ask for a single dollar. Number 2, you've got to track that unique expiration-based renewal deadline like a hawk. And number 3, if you think you might be exempt, please double-check that you meet every single one of those strict requirements.
You know, at the end of the day, all these rules, they're not just about filling out forms. They're really there to create transparency and to help protect donors. It's all about giving people the confidence to know that their donations are going to a good cause and being handled responsibly.
So I'll leave you with this one final question to think about. With Rhode Island's really unique date-based system, is your organization's compliance calendar really set up to handle it? And look, if your team needs a hand managing these registrations, whether it's just for Rhode Island or for a bunch of different states, Ironwood Registration specializes in exactly this kind of work, helping nonprofits stay compliant. You can learn more or even request some help over at ironwoodregistrations.com.